Yes, yes, welcome back. We're with Kevin Annett, who is the field secretary of the International Tribunal into Crimes of Church and State, who's coming to us from New York City. Welcome, Kevin.
Hi, Alfred. It's good to be with you again.
Yes, now you're on your way to Brussels to the trial of the being held by the International Common Law Court of Justice, and this is of Pope Francis, Jorge Bergoglio, the Jesuit Superior General Adolfo Pachon, and the Archbishop of Canterbury, Justin Welby. Could you give us an update on the latest in the pretrial proceedings on that trial?
Yeah, it's actually very exciting. This is up at itccs.org for people who want to read the details, but it just came out the other day, a number of important things. First of all, if you remember, on March 4th, there was a subpoena issued, public summons issued against these three defendants, and they had until last Tuesday to respond. They never did. And, of course, that's very important legally. It means they're not contesting the charges, that they are engaged in criminal conspiracy and global child trafficking. And as a result, the prosecutor's office with the court is going to proceed with the case, and the normal examination procedure where both sides present evidence, that's being waived. So that means the prosecution can just begin their case against these people and others who they're going to call. And the magistrates are going to most likely enter a plea of what's called nolo contendere, or non-contested plea on the part of the defendant. So that's very important. Once again, they're not challenging what's being said about what the accusations against them. And connected to that was a very startling two things that about the defendants. First of all, Francesco Zanardi, who works with one of our groups in Italy, he's the head of this Rete Labuso, which is a group in Savona, Italy. And he was doing an interview with me last week, and he disclosed that from sources right in the Vatican, it's clear that they believe that Francis is not the Pope at all, but simply what they call a caretaker figurehead. Because of a lot of evidence, he doesn't wear the papal ring. He doesn't live in the Vatican, but in a convent nearby. He's given no official security, and that in itself is that's never happened to a pope in history, to have no protection when he's walking around. And what's most telling, Alfred, is he makes policy statements all the time, and then the Cardinals will disavow it, saying he doesn't represent church policy. Well, how can he not represent church policy if, in their mind, he's this infallible figure? So it doesn't really make any sense. And in fact, what's going on is that Joseph Ratzinger is in effect still in power and wielding power from behind the scenes. And, he's recently made comments to that effect, where he's making pronouncement about cardinals that have been appointed and acting like he's still the Pope, which we believe he still is. So he's not out of the picture at all. And, there's also another very disturbing revelation we had about their participation, Ratzinger's participation in an actual ritual cult.
Right. Well, now, will this just before, could you tell us more about this cult?
Yeah. Now this is the third confirmation we've received about this. Previously, of course, back on May 8th at itccs.org, people can see the interview with Toos Nijenhuis, the Dutch woman, who I interviewed for several days, and she's a survivor of the ritual killing of the Satanic Ritual Network in Holland, where during the 1980s she saw Joseph Ratzinger, she claims, at these events at a Catholic cathedrals and at a grove in both France and Holland, where children were sacrificed and then buried. Now, according to a former member of this cult, it's called, in Latin, it's called Corona Novum, which means either the ninth crown or the ninth circle, which is significant, of course, because in Dante's Inferno he talks about the nine circles of hell. And this ninth circle is apparently a group that ritually, regularly rapes, tortures, and kills children. Now, this witness, who was an active member, saw both former Pope John Paul II, Karol Wojtyła, and Pope Benedict Joseph Ratzinger participate in ninth circle rituals, again held at a Catholic cathedral and a forest in France. So, to have a third confirmation now, we had the other confirmation came from a woman in the United States who also saw Ratzinger at a church in Montreal in the basement doing the same kind of ritual. She claims it happens every August 15th. Where these children are sacrificed. So the other final point on that is that the source also said that Vatican documents actually refer to this group, and apparently the participation in this cult is mandatory for the assumption of office by any pope, and the document refers to the ritual as what they call the magisterial privilege, and it's dated December 25th, 1967. The ITCCS has a copy of this alleged document, and that is a very important term. The magisterium is the College of Cardinals, and basically what he's implying by this is that it's their privilege to kill children as part of the ritual of killing and then consuming their blood of the newborn at these circle rituals. So that's the latest very disturbing, startling evidence that was given to the court.
So basically, if these allegations are found to be true, the Pope and the College of Cardinals are a Satanic Coven.
That's right. I mean, it bears all the characteristics of that, and the old saying, if it walks and talks like a duck, then it's a duck.
Yeah.
This is definitely, I agree.
So just speaking in the vernacular, if this were in fact found to be the case and these documents are true and we have the witnesses, we're talking here about the Church of Satan, not the Church of Christ. Is that correct?
That's right. And as a matter of fact, that's borne out if you look at the history, the terminology used in the Vatican. The Vicar of Christ, which is one of the official titles of the Pope. Vicarious, of course, means a substitute or replacement. And that's exactly, in other words, this figure has replaced Christ. He has all the titles of the Roman Emperor. So yes, exactly. It's not, certainly not a Church of Christ. Definitely, I agree.
Now, why do you think, and I realize that this is speculation, but why do you think that they're playing this role, this charade or this psyop, this with Pope Bergoglio, where he's kind of the outside man, and they've got Ratzinger as the real inside man? What exactly is going on here?
I think it shows the severity of the exposure that's coming down. They had to put a Jesuit in because, look, we know the history of the Jesuits. They were the masters of deception for over 400 years. They were created to counter not only the Reformation and the rise of kind of liberal Europe, but to keep the hegemony of the papacy over everything. Their specialty is deception and dissimulation. So, what better person to put in than a Jesuit? But also, on Thursday, President Obama is visiting the Pope. And I believe that geopolitically this has to do with, America's new Cold War with Russia over the Ukraine. They're desperate to get allies on this stuff. They're relatively isolated. So I think they're sitting down and trying to get the Vatican on side in this alliance, because I just heard today, was reading how China seems to be lining up with Russia against the Ukraine because they have a lot of money invested in the Ukraine, a lot of money owed by the Ukraine to the banks in China and Russia. So, we're seeing this kind of global alliance politicking going on, and if you're going to have the Vatican as an ally, the last thing you need is somebody like Ratzinger in as the official pope, because he's so implicated. and so obviously guilty in a lot of these crimes.
So this is really allowing the Vatican to be a major New World Order actor and line up with the Anglo-American alliance and the monarchies and the Illuminati from a power
Absolutely.
policy point of view.
Yes, and well, of course, as we know, that triangle between the District of Columbia, Vatican City, and the City of London, that's the triangle. And so, in a sense, it's a continuation of that. But when you hear, here's a small little example, but it's often the small examples that are very telling. I was in South Dakota just last week working with some farmers who were trying to set up a common law court to deal with these fraudulent mortgages that are taking their farms. And one of them told me that in this little Catholic church in a place called Salem, South Dakota, there's only about 500 people in the town, but this priest gets up and says somebody left a note saying that Pope Francis is the Antichrist and they're not coming to church anymore. And the priest said, I can't deal with this, and he got up and he walked out of the church. And this is in a little town. In America, and that kind of reaction is going on. It shows you the extent of people being aware of these things at every level in the Catholic Church.
Right. So there's a danger of a real implosion happening as the population is really aware of the. I just want to use that word again. Satanic, because of all the references to the Ninth Circle nature of the Vatican and of the New World Order insiders. At the City of London, at the UK monarchy, in the city of Washington, and at the Vatican.
That's right, and there's no better proof of that than Obama, dutifully going over and visiting with Bergoglio. And then, of course, on April 3rd, Elizabeth Windsor going down and doing the same thing. So, yeah, definitely that it's to solidify the power block, I think, because they're shaky. The whole thing is very shaky and coming down.
Well, also here in Canada, in Vancouver, it was recently decided that there would be no official inquiry into the disappearance of the Aboriginal women from the downtown east side in Vancouver, and whereas you've come forth with evidence that has been independently verified by investigators that I've spoken to here in Vancouver, that satanic rituals took place at Robert Picton's farm also.
That's right, and it's totally related to what we're talking about, because the child sacrifice and it seems to run right through the system of church and state crimes that we're talking about. We have a lot of documented evidence from the Indian residential schools. Working in the streets of Vancouver for many years, the descriptions of how people have died down there from the women on the street definitely pointed all of that to a satanic, practice. And in terms of the Picton farm, there was an independent inquiry started in the downtown east side, a missing people's inquiry, and one of the things we found out right away was that people like Larry Campbell, the former mayor of Vancouver, who's now sitting in the Senate and a loyal Catholic, and others connected to the military and CSIS were all seen not at Piggy's Palace, because the Picton farm was just a disposal site. The killings were actually happening in wealthy homes in Coquitlam. And, we had eyewitnesses about that. I even had a former CSIS agent contact me with that information, that it went very high up, it was international, and Vancouver was described as kind of the center of that whole hub of human trafficking and sacrifice. So, yeah, it's everywhere, and especially, I guess you could say the places you least suspected, that's where to turn over the rock and you'll find it.
Right. So what are you expecting to come out at this trial now?
Well, I do know from what I've learned, and of course, when I get over there, I'll know a lot more, because a lot of this communication is being quite restricted to people who need to know. And what I do know is that the prosecutor's office has already prepared the indictment against these three primary defendants for their direct role in human trafficking, child trafficking. And there is a secondary list of defendants, including this High Court Judge Fulford from England, who is an International Criminal Court judge, but he's also a member of this thing called PI, Pedophile Information Exchange, which advocates the lowering of age of consent to 4 years old. He's an open advocate of child rape, and he's sitting as the High Court judge and is the constitutional advisor to Queen Elizabeth. He's in her inner circle. So it's more of this Jimmy Savile stuff. And he's being named as one of the secondary defendants. The indictment is going ahead. The court case, like I said, is going to open, and we're going to begin to look at a lot of this hard evidence, of how this child trafficking is continuing and clearly involves human sacrifice of the whole gamut of these crimes.
Now, I find it quite coincidental that Barack Obama today is either traveling to Brussels or in Brussels. This is Monday, March 24th. And so as part of his journey to try and coordinate support of the European allies of the European Union, Brussels being the capital of the European Commission and of the European Parliament, to shore up his support for some sort of a response on the Ukraine-Russia dynamic. Do you think this has any bearing on these tribunals, or is this just a coincidence?
No, it's not coincidental at all. It's we found over the years that whenever we do an initiative to expose these crimes, the systems, the government and churches respond within a month, but they spin it to make it look like they're not responding to what we did, and yet they are. And this is more of the same. On the front page of the New York Times yesterday, it was the Sunday New York Times, big circulation, there was the center article describing how Obama's Catholic roots, the Catholic roots of his social activism led him to become the president. And it was lauding how wonderful the Catholic Church is, what a social conscience in his, and that inspired Barack Obama to be a civil rights lawyer and then went on to become president. I mean, it's totally disgusting, and it's, it shows you that the main organs of the establishment in America are totally behind this thing, the New York Times. I mean, how more establishment can you get?
Well, didn't the Jesuits and originally design Washington, D.C.?
That's right. It was not only design it, but the main think tank for politicians for a long time has been Georgetown University, which is a Jesuit-established college. When you look at, the roots go wide in America, and it coincided, this rise of that kind of influence coincided with, in 1871, the disestablishment of the American Republic and the creation of a corporation called the United States. Not the United States of America, which was the Republic, but the United States Incorporated. Some of the common law folks down here in New York have produced documents from the list of corporations in the United States showing how the office of the president is a private company. So, I mean, all of this information just shows the same cabal at work, really.
Right. So, so now that getting back to the Brussels trial, this how long do you anticipate the trial to be?
Well, frankly, it's going to be longer than the first one we did. The first one on genocide in Canada, a lot of the evidence was already available because of the work I've been doing. The eyewitnesses, over 20 years, our affidavits, the videotaped evidence, all that's the documentation, it was all there. And the verdict was pretty slam dunk. It was pretty obvious. Now, this case is going to be a lot more complex. I could see it running many months because it's so vast. And the eyewitnesses, these are about crimes occurring right now as we speak. And the eyewitnesses need not only protection, but to know that once the verdict, whatever it is, comes down, there's going to be some kind of enforcement or action on these things. And, an example of that is, of course, the man who we mentioned before, a former member of the Argentine government, the junta. He was a civil servant, fairly senior, who was sitting in on meetings with Bergoglio when it was planned how to kidnap and traffic the children of prisoners they had, political prisoners they had in their jails they were about to kill. And Bergoglio won the favor of the junta by that and other things. He's an eyewitness to those meetings. So we're hoping that this isn't going to be like when Ariel Sharon was about to be brought, on charges of complicity in the massacre of Palestinian refugees. And the day before his trial, the chief witness blew up in a Mossad car bomb in Tel Aviv. So, I mean, we're doing our best to prevent that, and yet, we're up against some pretty formidable forces. So it means the process it takes longer, but, hopefully with enough people aroused and with the support of politicians like Laurent Louis in Belgium, we're hopeful that this will reach some kind of critical mass.
Right. Will there be some sort of ongoing coverage of the trial so that those listeners who are interested can follow the details? How can people follow the details?
Right. Well, what I understand is that the opening session is going to be private because of concerns of security and apparently there has been a group dispatched from the Vatican to Brussels to try to disrupt the opening of the court.
I see.
Bribery, attacks, etc. Now, this is coordinated through what's called the Holy Alliance, which is the Vatican. It's their Black Ops department. They've been in operation since the 1500s. I see. And they were probably responsible for the assassination of Pope John Paul I and all the witnesses, and Roberto Calvi and all those guys who had knowledge of the Vatican Bank. That's kind of a long way to answer your question, but it's basically that the opening session of the court will be private, but as the evidence is introduced, my understanding is that even if you can't see the direct proceedings of the court, there will be evidence presented through the Public Information Office of the Tribunal. That's right. What I was talking to some of these people. So there will be regular press releases and other things, so people can keep abreast of what is happening.
Oh, good. And so people can go to the Tribunal website or to the various Facebook groups. Is that the best place? Well,
I'll tell you, in terms of the Common Law Court, there is a new website, and besides itccs.org, it's the International Common Law Court of Justice website. It's iclcj.com. That's right. iclcj.com. And that's, in fact, the better source to go in terms of the actual, material from the prosecutor's office that will be presented. Now, don't forget, in a court of law, it can't be made, a lot of this stuff can't be made public until a verdict comes down.
Right.
But yeah, they will definitely, there will be relevant stuff released to show people the evidence as it's presented. And of course, we're expecting new evidence to come forward as things that are in the works as, right now.
Sure. At this stage, how can people participate or show their support of, what is an unveiling or an exposure of a rather, this is beyond a novel. I mean, this is beyond.
Yeah.
This is like just exposing the Satan, the devil, right in the midst, hiding in plain sight of the human family.
Exactly.
How is the court, or how are you and the community here going to communicate the magnitude of this legal discovery and verdict to the human community at large?
Well, we just have to redouble our efforts. It relies on us. We know that corporate media is completely controlled and won't report these things. So everyone needs to take responsibility for not only getting the information out through the electronic medium, but talk to people in the communities, talk to people who are still foolish enough to be funding or going to these Catholic churches. There needs to be that movement, groundswell movement. Now, we already know it's happening. Just today, we noticed that the Justice Minister in Scotland said that, there's another referendum on Scottish independence coming up. He just said they changed their position, because originally they talked about, even an independent Scotland would retain ties to the monarchy. Now they're saying, well, it's up to the people to decide in a referendum if they want to sever ties or not.
Right.
So they're backing off from the monarchy, and I think that's all an indication that even at that level, people are smartening up, and they're looking at other options.
Right. Well, are there any other thoughts that at this stage you're in New York and you're now waiting for a signal to go to Brussels once things are in place there, and to observe at the trial? What are your thoughts at this? At this stage, your sort of summary thoughts that you'd like to share with our audience.
Well, I'm more excited now that I'm getting years with this stuff, because there's too much that's coming in to even to describe. But every day, literally, we're getting not only new offers of help from many levels, but we're getting people coming forward with real inside information, which we want to organize and put through the courts, so it's a very coherent presentation of all of this stuff. But I can definitely tell you that when I get to Brussels and I learn a lot more, one of my roles is going to be with the Public Information Office. So we'll have to organize fairly regular interviews so people can be fed this information, and that's going to be my job on the ground during April and May, and probably beyond that. So generally, I'm really grateful how this is finally paying off. All this hard work over the years really seems to be hitting a much higher level. On our posting about this yesterday, we had 6,000 hits in one day, which is 10 times our normal amount. So people definitely are sitting up and noticing this now.
Right. Well, we look forward, Kevin, to having you back. And as this rapidly breaking story develops, we thank you for taking the time to be on today, and we look forward to your coming back as events develop here in, I would call it, historic proportions.
Absolutely, and thank you, Alfred. Your ability to get this out through your networks is really paying off too. A lot of people tell me they read about this stuff through your network. So once again, it's deeply appreciated, and I'll certainly talk to you soon about all the latest news.
Excellent. Good. Well, thank you very much, and Godspeed.
Thank you, Alfred.